Hey everyone, and welcome back to In Focus with Ken Clough Photography, the podcast where we take a deeper dive into the heart of creativity, explore the stories that shape photographers, and talk about the craft, the business, and the passion behind the lens. Today, I'm joined by someone whose work, reputation, and storytelling have had a lasting impact on the Capital Region photography community and far beyond. Dino Petrocelli is a name that resonates with so many of us. Whether you know him from his early days shooting rock concerts, his years photographing custom motorcycles for American Chopper and Discovery Channel, or his 4 decades of wedding photography, Dino's story is filled with heart, humor, hustle, and a lifetime of lessons learned the old-fashioned way, through practice, mistakes, curiosity, and relentless determination. So let's jump in. Photographic beginnings. Every photographer has an origin story. That spark, that first camera, that first moment where the world looks different through a viewfinder. For Dino, that story begins with a Kodak X-15, a handful of flashbulbs, and the curiosity of a teenager who suddenly realized he could freeze time with a click. What I love about this part of his journey is how honest and relatable it is. Bad exposures, blown out flash, dark stages, all the early mistakes we've made. But Dino didn't walk away. He leaned in. He learned. He let photography take root. So I asked him to take us back to the beginning. How did you first fall in love with photography? And when did you realize it was something more than just a hobby? Dino, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're joining me here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm glad to, be part of it. I always like spreading the word around to other people that are interested, and I'm always willing to give my 2 cents, talk about what I've done.
No, you've got such a wonderful story. You've got such a great passion for photography, and you're also a great presence here in the Capital Region area in terms of photography. You've done so much over your career. How did you get interested in photography?
When I was 15 years old, for some reason, my father bought me one of these Kodak X-15, where I don't even remember how, the little cartridge film went in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Got 4 flashes on a flash bulb. Anyways, my father bought me this camera, right? And, I'm looking at it wondering, what am I supposed to do with this? So I put the film in it and I took pictures around the house and went outside and took some pictures and brought the film to the lab. And after a week or 2, I got the film back, and I thought it was really cool how this little box just stopped time, So, now I have these pictures. I mean, they weren't good, but I'm just saying that's really cool how this thing can freeze time like that. My brother took me to the Palace Theater to see a band called Santana back in the mid 70s. And I brought this with me. So we were probably 10 or 15 rows back. It was my first concert ever. I said, I'm going to bring the camera. Maybe I can take some pictures of the band, knowing nothing at all. So I take the whole roll of film, and I was excited for the pictures to come back. And when the pictures came back, the 3 rows ahead of me were all bright white, blown out heads, and the stage was dark and unreadable. I told my mother, I said, geez, I took this camera to that concert with my brother, with Rocky, and nothing came out. At that time, she was working with a woman for the state that was into photography, and that would actually go to concerts and take her camera, which was a real 35 millimeter. That was really the start of it. So we went out and bought my first 35 millimeter, a Canon FTB. It was a solid, heavy manual camera. Film goes in the back. You get the sprocket, you get the shutter, you got, this camera is such a game changer. And so I started playing with this and started loving it even more. I started, walking through the woods and doing, a little whatever and just taking pictures and taking pictures. And I wanted more than what the camera could offer. So I said, back then there was no YouTube, there was no online support, there was nothing, just either read books or took classes or whatever. So I took a photo class in high school, and I learned how to do black and white processing, making black and white prints. And I think I was in 11th grade at the time, so I was probably 16 now at the time. I made a little makeshift darkroom in my house that my parents had because you don't need a lot of room to do that. My first roll of film, I was all excited because I processed it. I went through all the steps. It's very critical to keep the temperatures what they're supposed to be because I processed the film. I could see all the images on the film, and I said, "This is really." I mean, I was like stoked. I got goosebumps. I see the film that
Yep.
I just shot, minutes ago, and so I have it in the wash. You got to develop it, then stop bath, and then fixer, and then you put it in the wash for like 30 minutes, and then when you're done, you squeegee the film, and when I squeegeed it, the water was too hot. So when I squeegeed it, all the emulsion just wiped right off, fell into the sink.
Oh
So
no.
all the images that were on that roll of film are now laying in the sink in a clump of mud. And I said, "Oh my God, are you kidding me right now?" So lesson learned. I did more and more and just got into it. And then my senior year of high school, my parents moved from Colony, or not Colony, Castleton, to Colony. So I went from a school that had 800 kids in the whole high school to a school that had 800 kids in just the senior class. So I went from tiny little school to huge. At this time, I was starting to see a lot of concerts. I had a lot of concerts under my belt. I had photo albums filled with concert pictures. And so what I did was in the study hall, I would keep my concert album open. There was like 100 kids in the study hall, and one person would stop and look, and then all of a sudden there's 20 more and 30 more. And that's how I made all my friends in school. I got connected with the photography teacher, and he really took a liking to me on how much I knew. And he would actually have me come into his class on my study halls and help him teach the class how to process black and white film.
Oh wow.
So
Wow.
that was really cool.
Rock concert photography. There's something magical about concert photography. The energy, the chaos, the limitations, the surprises, and the way light and sound collide. And for Dino, concerts were where he sharpened his instincts, built his confidence, and learned how to anticipate a moment before it happened. Imagine being crushed at the front railing at a Kiss concert in the 1970s, sneaking a camera into shows, racing home to process the film in a makeshift darkroom before school the next day. That was Dino's life. That was his training ground. And it's one of the most compelling parts of his story. So let's step back in time as Dino brings us into the world of rock photography before digital, before animation, and before the luxury of instant review.
Like in school, I'd talk to my friends and say, yeah, like I'll use Kiss for example. I'm going to see Kiss tomorrow because I would skip school because they were in Connecticut. So me and a friend of mine skipped school, drove to Hartford, Connecticut, snuck my camera. All these concerts, I snuck my camera into all of these shows. I go see Kiss. I take all these crazy pictures, and I come home at it was like a hour and a half, 2 hour drive. I think it was Hartford or something. I can't remember the amount of time it took to get home. But I wake my parents up and say, "Hey, I'm going to be rustling around in the dark room. I'm going to process this film from tonight, right?" So at midnight, I'm in the dark room till probably like 2 o'clock in the morning. I made all the negatives. I dried them, and now I'm able to make prints too because I learned the whole process, how to do the film prints. And I made like 10 or 15 8x10 prints from the Kiss show that I was at. So the next day in school, I'm showing all these pictures of Kiss, and people are freaking, because back then this was the biggest concert ever, biggest band ever. God, I wish I thought to have that. I got an 8x10 because now, mind you, nowadays and I hate to sound like the old man, but I'm going to sound like the old man. These kids nowadays don't know how good they have it shooting digital when they go to a concert, right? They're up there with the camera, they're shooting 3, 4, 500 photos, and not no issue. So when I shot Kiss, and this is on my website. If people want to go to my website, you go into my concert, or even on Facebook, you go into my gallery on Facebook, just type in Kiss, and you'll see all these Kiss pictures. And these are from 1976 or 77. I'm shooting, right? I'm shooting the band. I'm crushed on the railing. I was able to sneak my camera, got right up on the railing. The one main picture that I wanted was a picture of Gene Simmons when he would blow the flame on the torch, because back then nobody, that was insane, right?
Right, right.
The one song ended, and I knew that this was coming up. So I see him walk off stage, and then I realize he's going to probably get the torch to do this thing, right? To blow the flame. And all of a sudden, I'm out of film. So I'm crushed on the railing, right? And so I'm trying to rewind the film because, digital, we don't have digital, so we got to put a new roll in. I'm rewinding the film, and I'm crushed on the stage, and I'm trying to do all this with just as slow as I can. Now, I don't want to lose the roll, so I take the roll out, I stick it in my pocket, put a new roll in. I have to bring the leader over and make sure I have it in there right, so I don't shoot 36 blanks. I advanced the film to the first frame. I lifted up, I focused. He did have the torch, lifted it up, blew the flame, and I shot it. And if you go on the Facebook, you'll see the picture that I got of him blowing a bunch with a bunch of other. I mean, there's a lot of concert pictures on there, and they're all from like the 70s when I would sneak my camera in. In fact, some of them look a little out of focus, some of them look a little underexposed, some of them look a lot of camera shake. But I have a little saying up there that says these pictures are raw, 35 millimeter, didn't know what I was doing, and it just shows the realness of photography.
Well, it's kind of that's how you earned your chops. I mean,
Right,
you suffered through it and you learned the hard way,
right.
and I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of photography, at least I found, is trial and error.
Oh, absolutely.
You
Yeah.
try it, it doesn't work, you try something else until you get it right.
Nowadays with the digital, the trial and error is fun because you see right away.
Right, right.
Back in the day, you trial and you had to wait a week to see your errors. I got a picture up on the wall there of Roger Daltrey when he played at the Palace. I feel a pull on the back of my shirt, and it's the big, huge security guard that used to work down there for ages. And he goes, take that film out of your camera, right? So I took it out, and he held it in his hand, right? And I'm figuring I'm busted. This is it. I'm done. He gave me the film back, and he said, put that film in your pocket, and if I see your camera up again, I'm taking everything. So that roll of film that he gave me back, on that roll was my first published picture in Cree magazine in April of 1986.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's awesome.
First ever published. Well, it wasn't big. It was black and white, but it was like to see that in a national magazine. I mean, I was 20, I think I was 23 or 24. I was like beside myself to see that.
American Choppers and the Discovery Channel. Of course, Dino's career took a major leap when he started photographing motorcycles. And not just any motorcycles, but custom bikes built by American Choppers. One of the most iconic shows of its era. What fascinates me about this chapter is how it wasn't a lucky break. It was the result of years of building relationships, refining skills, and being ready when the opportunity arrived. From shooting parts for a motorcycle company, to rolling chassis for a magazine ad, to suddenly fielding a call from Orange County Choppers. Dino's story is a masterclass in saying yes, doing the work, and letting one job lead to another. So let's hear how that phone call changed everything, and what it was like to photograph some of the most famous bikes in the world for the Discovery Channel. Now, you've had some other very interesting things. I mean, you're well known for your photos for American Choppers. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? And how did that
Yeah,
happen? And how?
what happened was, I mean, because of the service days, I kind of like photography was on the back burner. Then I met my wife, and we started taking trips to the mountains, and I started feeling that urge for photography more. I bought another camera. We started taking trips. I started taking a lot more pictures. A buddy of mine asked me to shoot his wedding. I said no at first, but then I got talked into doing it. And then I'm on pins and needles. I can't think straight because now I got to shoot a wedding. I've never even been to a wedding. The mother of the bride, who I didn't know the bride, I knew the groom because I went to school with him. She told her mother that I was experienced. I've been doing weddings for years, not to worry because they wanted somebody that was experienced. Never, didn't even know what happens at a wedding. I did the wedding. I said, wow, that was good. I made a few dollars, not a lot, but I made a few. That led into another, snowballed into a wedding career, but I needed more. Started working for a couple photo labs, and the photo lab that kind of like catapulted me quite a bit was a place called Bulkland Custom Visuals. I started that in 93 or 94 and worked there for 9.5 years. But through that lab, I made a lot of connections, met a lot of other photographers, started doing a little bit of commercial work here and there. But the one thing about that job, I worked with a girl there, and at the time, her boyfriend worked for a company called Biker's Choice, which they made custom frames, and customs back then was a big deal because I was in the mid to late '90s. To have a custom motorcycle
Mm-hmm.
was like unheard of, and I started shooting all their parts. And so that led into Orange County Choppers wanted to. They have these things called rolling chassis where you get the wheels, the frame, the bars, everything but the motor and the transmission. So Orange County Choppers wanted to take an ad out on the back of a magazine called Hot Bike, and the Orange County Choppers asked the editors of the magazine if they knew any photographers in the Albany area that they could have their rolling chassis shot and put it on the back of their magazine, because at the time I had done a couple shoots for Hot Bike, so they knew me from this area. They liked my work. So then I one day I'm in my little studio behind my house at the time. I wasn't even in this studio yet. The phone rang, and that's when the caller ID always came up. And on the caller ID, it said Orange County Choppers. And I looked at my assistant at the time, good friend of mine, still a good friend, Christina. She did all the OCC shoots with me. I told her, I said, look at Orange County Choppers. This could be something big, right? So, because at the time, that's when they first started their show and they were really starting to catapult big, right? So they asked me if I'd come down and shoot their rolling chassis,
Mm-hmm.
which I did. We kind of hit it off. And they said, hey, listen, when we put these bikes together, we'd like to get them photographed. And I said, I could do that. And so before I really knew how far they were, they said, we got 4 bikes we want to get shot. Can you come down here and set up? So I brought it was a pain in the ass, but I brought the lights, I brought the backgrounds, I brought everything down and set up. I was there for 2 days. I shot 4 or 5 bikes, and everybody loved it. And then Discovery Channel, because they were on the show at the time, had asked them, hey, who's shooting your bikes? Because we would like to get the bike shot and put on our website every time they build one. And then that's when that's when everything hit the fan, and that's when I started working for the Discovery Channel, and I had that gig for 3 years straight. Go down there 2 to 3 times a month for 3 years. Rain, shine, didn't matter. And there's times I'd go down there and I'd spend we'd spend all day down there, and because they'd be busy, but they needed me, and I stayed there to do 1 or 2 shots at the end of the day when they were finally ready. It was a good gig. I was really sorry to when that ended. My last shoot with them was in April of 2006 at the Syracuse Carrier Dome when they gave Billy Joel the bike live on stage, and the picture I got of that is just incredible.
40 years of wedding photography. Behind every long career in photography, there's a foundation. And for Dino, that foundation was weddings. Decades of them. Thousands of them. And as every photographer knows, this is not work for the faint of heart. It's long days, high pressure, unpredictable conditions, and zero room for error. But it's also meaningful, emotional, and deeply human. It's storytelling on a deadline, year after year, weekend after weekend. And in this segment, Dino reflects on the decades he's spent capturing families, traditions, celebrations, and moments that can only happen once. He talks honestly about the nerves, the speed, the exhaustion, but also the pride in delivering images that become part of a family's history. Let's dive into Dino's reflections on 4 decades behind the scenes of the wedding world. Now, you had mentioned wedding photography just a few minutes ago. Can you talk a little bit about the wedding photography you've done? And because you've done that for years, maybe decades.
Well, that's the wedding photography is what funded me over the last 40 years. I never wanted it. I never advertised it. I never asked for it. It just kind of fell in my lap, and it took me a good probably 7 or 8 years to get really super comfortable doing them, and even to the point where this past year, which is my last year of actually officially shooting weddings, I never showed up at a house not being nervous. Because if you get to that point, then you might as well not do it because that means you don't really care. It was a great run of 40 years. I'm not going to say I enjoyed every one. I took a lot of pride in what I did. What I didn't like is having to think about, like on a Wednesday, thinking about the whole weekend tied up with shooting weddings, and everybody else is out riding motorcycles, taking car rides, going to the beach, going to the pool, going to the cookout, and I'm dressed all in black going to a wedding on a 85, 90-degree day. Because when I first started the weddings, I was shooting 35 millimeter. It's funny because the it was the sister of the first wedding I ever did. She got married like 2 years later, and I was using a Canon AE1 program, and I had a motor drive hooked to the bottom, right? So when you have a motor drive on the older cameras, when you get to 36 or the end of the roll, it automatically rewinds the film and makes a shit ton of noise when it's doing it, right? So the bride's getting ready to walk down with her father, and I take the last picture of the maid of honor coming down, and it hit 36 and started rewinding. And I'm in the not the last pew, but I'm mixed in with the crowd, right? And I'm trying everything. I'm holding the camera under the pew and I'm watching them walk up, the father and the bride walk up, praying that this film would rewind and I'd get a new roll in. I only had one camera at the time. I was still brand new at it. And then I looked out of the corner of my eye, and there they go walking past the pew that I'm in, trying to get a new roll with the camera. So I missed the shot. So at the end of the wedding, I said, "Hey, just kind of walk up the aisle with your father again, would you please?" And the thing about a wedding is you got to. I mean, you
Yeah.
do them. You got to commit yourself. You're going 100 miles an hour. I mean, I just had a friend of mine tell me the other day we were on a little bike ride, and he said, "I can't do weddings because I can't go at that speed and be consistent." A good photographer can do that. Can be running, and you're going inside, you're going outside, you're using flash, you're using ambient light, you're using this, you match the ambient light with your flash, all these things you're trying to do on the fly, and you have no time to think.
Hmm.
So that's why I tell people that are getting into this, you got to sit in the chair in your house when you get your new camera and just play with it all night. And then put a card in it and start shooting and start. You need to know every button on that camera. You set it up how you want it to be. My camera, I know what every single button does. I don't have to take my face off the viewfinder. I know exactly where everything is. And if you use two cameras, they should both be identical.
No, I agree. I think, I shoot a lot of weddings and I've helped a lot of younger photographers, who are interested in shooting weddings. And I usually tell them it's a marathon and it's a complete challenge. You've got to be going for sometimes 8, 10 hours. One wedding I did was 16 hours from dawn to dusk. And
I
you,
know,
you
crazy,
always have
right?
to be on. You always have to be. creative when your brain turns to mush at the end of the day, you know?
It's nuts. And then there's no room for error. You mess it up, and you're the one that looks bad.
Advice for photographers. As we move toward the end of our conversation, I wanted to make space for something especially valuable: Dino's advice for photographers today. This is advice shaped by film and digital, by commercial and wedding work, by success and by mistakes. Advice shaped a lifetime dedicated to this craft in an industry that has changed dramatically in the last 40 years. From learning your camera inside and out, to staying consistent, to seeking out mentors, to navigating a digital landscape where phones, AI, and social media shape the field, Dino speaks from a place of experience and honesty. So here's Dino sharing what he wants every new photographer to know. Is there any advice that you would give to any person who's interested in being a photographer, whether it be a wedding photographer or commercial photographer or whatever? Is there any advice you want to give to them?
Well, the main thing I tell people is YouTube, YouTube, YouTube. Find studios that will let you come in and hang out and watch what's going on, ask questions. You just got to stay in the game. You cannot play with your camera today, put it down, and then pick it up in 2 weeks, and then think you're going to remember. It's something that you have to do consistently, day in and day out. And the other thing about advice is when you look at a photo, don't just look at the photo, whether it's in a magazine or whatever. Look at it and try to figure out how it was done, where the light was. Look at the catch lights in the eyes. Look at the reflections in the paint of a car shot, or look at to see where the light's coming from. And then if it's something small like a product shot, take that shot and try to emulate it. Try to replicate what you see, and you keep doing stuff like that. And I'm telling you, YouTube. I've been doing this a long time, and there's guys out there that'll totally blow me away in a half a second. But I look up to those guys at 66, and these guys are at 36, and I look at them and see how they're doing it online, and I try to emulate what they're doing. Not exactly, but just to understand how this works and for what they're doing. There's so many like light diffusers, and light is me and you can go out and shoot the same thing. There could be 10 of us shooting the same thing, and every shot can be different because of how we light it or angle, the perspectives, whatever.
I know. Yeah, no, I find it's so difficult too. I mean, when I look at what other photographers are doing, there's a lot of great photographers out there, and some are young. Yeah, some are younger than me, and like you, I look at their photos. And I'm like, huh, how did they do that? Or yeah,
And I know,
or
right?
wow, that.
My son's doing stuff in the studio here that blows me away.
Or I watch a YouTube and I'm like, wow, that is like such an awesome thing. Why didn't I think of
Right.
that?
I know.
You know, it's like, what the
Yeah.
heck? At my age, I'm in my 60s as well. It's like sometimes you feel like you're struggling to keep up with the younger
Yeah.
generation here.
Well, here's what I do now, because it used to drive me insane. I used to, and in fact, my friend Christina is the one that told me to stop doing this. Was looking at everybody else and worry about what you're doing. If what you're doing makes you happy, it makes who you're working for happy, then that's the bottom line. I mean, yeah, look at other people to if you're not getting the concept or how something was done, learn how that was done, but don't depress yourself looking at all the great shooters out there, and then depress yourself because you're not doing you're doing so much more than what you're doing. It's always going to be a learning thing. It's always going to be something new out there. Every time you open up Facebook or open up Instagram, there's a new product or something new you want to use.
No, I mean, I feel the same way. It's like you have to focus on what you're producing as
Exactly.
a artist and be comfortable with what you're
Right.
producing. And if, there are always going to be people that are going to do things that you think are better or different.
Right.
But I found as a photographer and with my clients, they're attracted to what I do, not what other people do.
You know what I do sometimes is when I got 50, 60 pictures or maybe 100 pictures hanging on the walls here. I see them every day, and they get boring to me, right? So sometimes what I'll do is I'll put my big screen TV on and I'll run my slideshow. I have a portfolio with like, I don't know, 3,000 images in it. And I'll sit down at the table and I'll have lunch watching the screen go. And I'm saying, holy crap, I'm really not that bad, am I? It takes that to kind of smack yourself in the face a little bit and say, all right, I got some good stuff in there. Holy crap. It just takes sometimes to sit back and look at what you're doing.
Well, Dino, I want to thank you for taking the time and sharing some thoughts with me about your career and about your photography. You're a great photographer, and I think, in my mind, you're one of the top photographers in our region. And I really appreciate you spending some time with me here today. And that wraps up today's episode of In Focus with Ken Clough Photography. I'm Ken Clough. And I want to extend a huge thank you to Dino Petrocelli for sharing his story, his wisdom, and his incredible journey with all of us here today. What I love most about Dino is his honesty about the craft, the work, the pressure, the passion, and the lifelong commitment it takes to stay in this field. His story reminds us that photography isn't just about cameras and settings. It's about curiosity. It's about perseverance. It's about learning from every mistake, every job, every shoot, and every frame. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow, like, and share the podcast. And leave a review to help others discover In Focus with Ken Clough Photography. Thanks for listening. Stay inspired, keep creating, and I'll see you in the next episode.